Welcome to Tattoos, Code, and Data Flows. Very excited for our guest today, Ory Segal. He is an expert in application security and cloud security and holds a ton of patents. He currently works for Palo Alto Networks, but he has a resume and a experience in the industry that's amazing. Very excited to have him on as a guest today.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Well, welcome, Ory. Thank you for being a guest today. Just for the audience, I know you have a lot of content out there, a lot of different things on LinkedIn and a lot of webinars and a lot of speaking engagements. Why don't you give the audience a little background on yourself, just so people can get to know you a little bit better?
Sure. So I'll start with now. I'm right now working as Senior Director of Product Management at Palo Alto Networks, part of Prisma Cloud. My team is responsible for the web app and API security module, which is part of the Prisma Cloud platform. I joined Palo Alto Networks through the acquisition that took place in June 2019 of a startup that I co-founded and was the CTO called PureSec. PureSec were the pioneers in serverless security. We were the first to discover that there is a need for securing serverless functions, and created a very interesting solution for that. And Palo Alto found that to be found a fit with that and Prisma Cloud, and so they acquired us. Prior to the 2 years I spent at PureSec, I spent 5.5 years leading the threat research team at Akamai. And when I joined Akamai in 2012, we were just starting with the web app firewall, the cloud-based web app firewall. They were looking for somebody with credibility in the industry. I've had a lot of years, I'll talk about that in a second, in the web app and API security industry. And so there was a good fit between us. And so I joined Akamai. We created a team basically from scratch that collected all of the data coming from the Akamai platform, which for security researchers is a gold mine. We're talking about petabytes of data. The Akamai sees 30% of all internet traffic every day. And so being able to research that and create web app and API security solutions based on that intelligence was fun, was a great ride. When I joined, it was maybe less than $1 million in revenue that year, and when I left in 2017, it was already beyond $500 million in revenue.
Amazing.
And that was all our team, all of the development, the research, the big data analytics. We did things that I've never seen before. And prior to Akamai, I was at IBM leading the AppScan product line, both the static and the dynamic analysis. And I got to IBM through an acquisition of Watchfire. And I was in Watchfire because of the acquisition of Sanctum. And I joined Sanctum in 1999. So I pretty much spent the past 20 plus years doing application security, web application security, and being in teams that pioneered some of these spaces. I've got more than 25 patents in static and dynamic analysis. Actually, if you know IAST, interactive application security testing, I'm signed on the patent behind that together with Guy Pajarny from Snyk, CEO of Snyk. So that's what I've been doing for the past 20 something years.
Well, it sounds like you've had a lot of free time and haven't been able to do very much. So, a lot of gaps in there. But, we've crossed paths a few times. We have a lot of the same connections in the industry, kind of running in the same circles for many years. So I appreciate you coming on. So why don't we jump into the webinar with our first section?
Thinking out loud, maybe we found love right where we are.
Well, welcome to our first section, which is thinking out loud. Ory, you do a lot of things in application security and cloud security. What is top of mind for you when you get up in the morning and as you move through your day and your month and your year with all these different topics you're covering? What is kind of keeping you engaged and focused based on the industry?
Other than what am I going to eat for lunch, right? No, so look, I've been involved, and I just mentioned that in my short history in this industry. I've been involved in application security for many years, and I find application security to be the most challenging and most rewarding domain in cybersecurity. There's a lot of cool challenges there. But I feel that we as a community, as you know, the cybersecurity industry, we didn't figure it out completely yet. And like we know what needs to be done. There's been, you know, the OS top 10 and the MITRE top 25, and there's a bazillion frameworks that can help you to do things. But I think that we haven't found the right recipe for how to do it right. Like we know what should be there at the end of the day, or down the road, but we don't know what's the right recipe for instilling it to the masses, doing it in scale. And on top of that, every few years, we see new layers or new technologies getting added on top of the security stack, on the software stack. And some of them provide better software development, you know, containers and serverless functions and microservices and APIs. And obviously open source packages that made things much simpler for developers. But with these new layers, there's more and more complexity. And every time we reach the point that we believe we figured out the perfect recipe for application security, we have to go back and rethink everything from scratch. And if it was incremental, or you know, if it was progressive, every time there was something we need to change or adapt a little bit, I wouldn't be worried. But with the amount of noise that comes into the system, and the amount of FUD, you know, some of which comes from us, from vendors, and I'm also, you know, a part of that. I think this causes mayhem, and I'm constantly trying to figure out what would be the best way to approach application security. Maybe in a way that's not perfect, and not perfect, but that will stay with us for a long time and will allow us to scale what we know. So if I had to summarize it, I'm interested in finding the perfect recipe for the tools and the processes that will allow us to scale what we know about application security to the masses.
Now, do you feel, and I'll just kind of ask a quick question here because it's of interest to me. Do you feel that, you know, it's like it's a moving target in terms of all these tooling and processes and skill sets of people are trying to secure something that's constantly being created in a different way? And I think that, in my opinion, is one of the reasons why there's this constant ebb and flow and different change of approach, because we're no longer in waterfall. Now we're CI/CD. We're using Agile. I mean, the way software is developed in terms of components and cloud native and microservices. And so it's like all of a sudden everyone thinks, phew, we're there, we got it. And all of a sudden the whole kind of ecosystem and landscape changes. Do you think that's what's really driving the challenges? Or
so that's the question. Is the basis, is the ground really moving, or can we continue with what we know and try to avoid all the noise? What I'm trying to say is that the basics stay the same. You know, SQL injection, cross-site scripting from 20 years ago, still relevant today, sadly. But the concept of building secure or resilient software is still the same. It hasn't changed. What we are dealing with, it's like, you know, the juggler with the or the kid with the putting the finger in the dam, right?
Yep.
We constantly have to deal with vendors, trends of new things that interfere or mask or add noise to the basics. And if people adhere to the basics, at least, that would be great. But yes, cloud introduces, you know, new misconfigurations that you can introduce, and containers got their own thing, and microservices, you need to do, you know, microsegmentation, and you need to think about who's talking to who. Yes, each new layer introduces new complexities, but there is some basics that we need to make sure that people follow.
Oh, I agree. No, great content. Absolutely fantastic. We'll move to our next section where you can tell us what's really ticking you off in the world today.
I got a lot of problems with you people. Now you're going to hear about it.
I'm such a cynic, and there's so many different things that bother me, and I'm pretty sure that I've heard every person on your webinar or podcast say that. But
Well, thank you for listening, by the way.
My pleasure. I'm getting a lot from it too as well. I love it. So I'm going to choose one thing that really bothers me, and that's the the fragmentation in the cybersecurity industry. And I've been sort of hinting in my Twitter account on that. I'm trying not to be too controversial and to annoy people and to rock the boat and all of that, but I think that we are seeing today a lot of single feature companies like point solutions or niche vendors. And that existed since I remember,
Yep.
since I've been a part of this industry 20, 30 years ago. By itself, it's not a bad thing, of course. I think the what used to happen, or today, if you look at large platform companies, I work for one, there are plenty others. These companies must cater to large enterprise audiences. They need to pay attention to enterprise features, which means that inherently they respond slower to new emerging technologies and emerging threats, and they need to worry about the integrations with all the tools and the enterprise requirements. Um, and in the past, smaller, younger, more bold companies with point solutions would eventually get acquired by the bigger platform companies. Today, I see, there's a problem. In the last few years, we see huge VC investments into these companies, and that brings ridiculously high valuations, and the prices are high. And we see a lot as a result of that, by the way, we see a lot of sort of, I call them bogus product categories getting created by analyst firms. I'm not going to mention any analyst firms, but if you look at all the forecasts for the next five years in application security, weird categories that I never thought would deserve their own category. And due to the high valuations, it's impossible today for large platform companies to do M&As. It's impossible, which is sort of a chicken and an egg. So it leads back to fragmentation. We have a lot of niche products hanging around, getting more and more money. Prices go up, nobody can buy them, and the fragmentation goes on and on. And so if I need to be a bit more practical, I think that this entire twisted circle creates a twisted view of the real problems that need solving. And marketing teams, they need to justify the huge valuation, so they aggressively spread not fake data, but inflated data to attract a lot of attention around their specific problem. And that forces CISOs and application security teams to look at many different point solutions, and that affects budget prioritization in a negative way and masks the real problem. So to summarize, that just the fragmentation in the cybersecurity industry really drives me nuts, and I don't see this going away anytime soon.
Yeah, and one of the questions too is you mentioned the big companies, and it's like you could have the best product that revolutionizes everything in terms of security across the board, architectural security, for your applications, API security. What is it? But the biggest question is, how do I operationalize this? It's like, okay, so instead of the unbelievable findings and the ease of use, you're just worrying about how you operationalize it. I understand it's a huge challenge, but that shouldn't be a barrier to entry. There should be a way to do it if it is a game-changing tech. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. And I think that at the end of the day, when you have a lot of even the best point solutions, the best really AI behind all the, the magic, the bells and whistles, if all of these point solutions, if you end up buying them and they are siloed, they don't really integrate well with each other, you're missing the whole point. You're missing so much smart defense in depth things that you could achieve if you were able to intelligently tie them all together. I actually spoke about that yesterday in a conference. I think that I really want the large vendors to be able to do M&As and buy, the cutting edge vendors that do really cool things.
No, great points. So now we're going to flip the table, or flip the script, if you will, to talk about, you have your magic wand. What would you fix if you had the power and had the ability and had the team to do it?
Okay, so since this is a chicken and egg solution, I don't know which would be first, but I think that first I would somehow convince VCs that they need to be a bit more realistic. It's okay to invest less in smaller companies. The valuations that used to be 15 years ago were more realistic. Not every company is destined to be a platform or a unicorn company. But unfortunately, VCs live in a constant state of FOMO, and they're afraid to miss on the next. And that's understandable. They need to invest money and to make money. So they are constantly looking for the next big company. But that also causes founders to be, I guess, less modest. So I would somehow convince founders to be more modest, understand their place in the overall, in the grand scheme of things, to understand that if they are, it's okay to focus on a niche in cybersecurity, but don't sell yourself as the one solution for all of your world, all of the world's cybersecurity problems. It's okay to say, I don't know, I do application security testing. It's not, you don't have to be a platform for solving the entire problem domain. Uh, and last but not least, uh, I would convince CISOs and AppSec teams to try and think a bit more about adopting more consolidated platform solutions. Checking if you do go with a point solution, check that it easily integrates into a platform that you already own, so that you can reap the benefits of that.
No, awesome stuff. Now, do you think kind of this is a problem that those industry analysts that you talked about earlier are saying that, to be highly ranked and highly rated in their reports, whatever their report's called, is you got to have the platform. You got to have the platform. And only will you be ranked high if you have the complete depth and breadth of every type of, security, architectural, cloud, what have you, technology. Do you think that's kind of a misconception that you really don't need the full platform, and that point solutions that do something really well are just as good? How would you kind of answer that question?
I need to answer. I need to be sensitive. I don't want to mention any analyst from one specific.
No, we've been very clean.
Firm.
We've been very nice to the analysts.
But I love their work. I love talking to them. I love reading their stuff. I think they're doing a terrific job. But they talk a lot about, they would rank platform companies higher, but at the end of the day, you see in their analyst, in their white papers, you do see a lot of smaller niche vendors. They have all those, up and coming vendor of the year awards or whatever that they give to smaller companies. I would love to see them put more emphasis on that. Again, I'm not saying that there is no room for smaller vendors, but we just have to understand that we cannot mask or twist reality and bombard, push propaganda out for some niche area in cybersecurity just because we think it's the coolest, and that's what we do.
No, great points. Great points. Thank you very much. So now we'll move into the kind of the quicker section of the podcast, the speed round.
He's going the distance. He's going for speed.
So we're going to jump in, and I changed a couple of these questions if you've heard the podcast before, but some of them are still the same. So is it DevOps, DevSecops? You've been living in this space a long time. What's your opinion on the correct or the approved phrase, or how you define it?
At this point, I'm an old timer, so I would say,
right.
Frankly, I don't give a damn. But
that's interesting.
No, yeah. But really, if I do have to, from my understanding of reality, DevOps and DevSecops are two completely different things. I like looking at DevSecops as the modern reincarnation of AppSec teams of the old world, with the agile, pushing software, pushing changes, new microservices a few times a day. There's no room anymore for the old world kind of AppSec teams. If you want to involve them constantly and make them help and make them empower the developers to write secure code, I think the right approach is DevSecops. And I think that it's like putting a champion, like a team of champions within your dev or DevOps teams that is responsible for, in my opinion, for application security or for the security of the software that you're building. And that allows you to roll out a lot more software much faster and much more secure. DevOps is something completely different, in my opinion.
No, that's great because people get very passionate about this statement. Okay, next question. What's your opinion on shift left, especially as we're moving to this very aggressive CI/CD processes with cloud native, and everyone's still talking about, and you mentioned marketing people and documents still mentioning shift left. What's your take on the usage and the kind of appropriate lens on shift left as a term in the industry?
Okay. Since I'm a normally ranting person, I would.
You can rant here. This is totally, you're totally rant away.
I'm tempted to say that all these marketing terms are ridiculous, but in reality, shift left really served its purpose, and it helped, I think, at the end of the day, push organizations to adopt security earlier instead of just doing pen tests at the end of the process. So maybe instead of shift left was great a few years ago. Maybe what we actually need to say is spread in all directions. Do some left, do some right. I would love to see. I constantly say that you can't expect software to be secure if the product manager doesn't require security to be a first-class citizen. If you don't like I've been in multiple cybersecurity companies, and in every company, whenever there was a web management console that would present security events, there would always be cross-site scripting there. And the reason for that is because the product manager never said, hey, make sure that the web console is not vulnerable to cross-site scripting. And so I think you need to go a lot more left than what we're doing today. I want to see security being required by stakeholders, but I also want to see a lot more to the right. So just spread thin across the entire
you've probably heard me say this in previous, and my statement is shift everywhere. Don't shift left, don't shift security everywhere, because the entity you're looking at is different at every phase of the DevOps process, the DevSecops process. So shifting security everywhere is the best way, and just one side of the equation isn't as good as everywhere in the equation. So
I love that.
Great point. So there's a question I have for you. This is a new question, and I'm not going to surprise you with this. You have experience with WAF, Web Application Firewall, and it always just seems every marketing or white paper I read tend to treat. I'm a redhead, so I can say this. I'm not insulting anybody. A WAF is the redheaded stepchild. Oh, that's old. It doesn't work anymore. All of these new major awesome technologies. What is your opinion on a WAF in 2022?
I've been talking about the Swiss cheese paradigm in the past 2 days, over and over. Do you know that one? Looking at security as a Swiss cheese paradigm?
I think so, but why don't you fill us in? I don't want to say
if somebody's following me in the past week, they probably think I'm repeating myself like a broken record. But people like to talk about defense in depth and onion layers, and the more layers you add, the more security you have. I love the Swiss cheese analogy. It actually came from, I believe, from aviation safety. In a nutshell, every slice of Swiss cheese has holes in it, and that, in my opinion, sort of corresponds to the fact that every security mechanism that you use, be it a WAF or a firewall, a next-gen firewall, or a runtime protection, they have holes. Nobody's perfect. I can tell you that as a security. I'll be the one honest security vendor out there saying my solution is not perfect. Hackers will find a way to bypass that. You can morph payloads, you can do many different things, and you can bypass pretty much everything. What you want to do is to add more and more layers of Swiss cheese so that holes don't align and that you don't allow one cyber kill chain, from the beginning to the end. So that's That's the analogy. So WAFs are not perfect. Are they old? I don't know. They evolved. There were multiple generations of web app firewalls. We had the Sanctum App Shield,
Yeah.
and then Imperva, and then Incapsula. All the cloud vendors, and then today we are seeing the and there was the RASP, obviously RASP period, and now we are seeing the more lightweight cloud native RASP agents or agentless or whatever. Uh, the technology evolves, but I think what really evolved is not the technology and not the level of protection. What evolved is the vendors understanding that people want a simpler solution, not a more secure solution. And it goes back to the layers of security that I mentioned. I'm going to tie it all together now. People need a solution that works, that they can operate easily, that will catch the low-hanging fruit attacks. A nation state actor will bypass your WAF, even if it's like light years ahead of its time. But a WAF does a very good job, if obviously if it's easy to operate, a very good job in pushing away and deterring attackers to go to the next target. It's not perfect. It's one layer, one additional layer of security that you need to put in front of your web interfaces, APIs. So yeah, is it obsolete? I don't think so. I wouldn't put web APIs and web front ends in front of the public internet without anything to prevent the basics. It's not perfect, but it's definitely not something. It's not an obsolete technology. It's not legacy at this point. There were older generations, appliance-based WAF that
Yeah.
really don't have any place today in the world. I think in that sense, we are moving forward. We are moving forward with new technologies, new ways to deploy web application firewalls. Uh, as an example, in the past, you used to put the URL of the application, and you had to put the TLS certificate, and that was how you would configure a WAF to protect the endpoint. Today, in the world of microservices and constantly ephemeral workloads, that's not going to work. How do you know what kind of where do you want to place the WAF? Where do you want it to protect? You need something that is cloud native by itself. So that by itself is a nice progression. But I like the technology. I think it does its job very well.
Awesome. Very good. And then the final question, and this is one I've kept in there because I really like the answers, educates me, is who in the industry do you look up to or follow on social media, Twitter, and that type of stuff? Who are the people you like to say, I want to read that article again? Oh, there's a new white paper by this guy. I like reading this guy's stuff. Who are the people you kind of follow and research?
It's amazing that you said white paper because again I have a rant here. I think when I started in the industry, and you're in the industry as long as I've been, people used to write much longer, bigger, more thorough research white papers. And I love to read those. If you remember Rainforest Puppy and Frack Magazine, and then the world went to blogs, and things got a bit shorter. People have less attention span. I still love to read, blogs from friends of mine like Jeremiah Grossman,
Yep.
and there were a few of those, Arsnake and Arian Evans. There were a few of those, and then Twitter came and sort of forced people to dumb down their thoughts and to simplify everything and make it shorter. So I'm less and less interested in following Twitter. I mainly follow friends and people I find funny, not finding educational. However, I still really, really love reading RFCs. And there's something really comforting about the thoroughness and the strict format that RFCs are written in. And I love to read academic white papers. I think there's a lot of cutting edge technological ideas there that vendors are not paying enough attention to. And having said that, I still follow a few people. Simon Wardley, I love his writing. I love his ideas about mapping things. And I still love to follow AWS folks, especially when there are new features coming out and new services. So I love staying up to date. That's going with me since my days in serverless a few years ago.
No, great stuff. Great. A lot of the names I recognize that I've known for years as well. And I agree. It's like the delivery of content is much different these days. It's short bursts of information that you're trying to get the same amount of value out of versus that 30, 40 page white paper. So definitely understand where you're coming from. Now we'll move into the expert witness round where I get to ask some questions.
Go ahead.
Your Honor, I move to disqualify Ms. Vito as an expert witness.
Can you answer the question?
No, it is a trick question.
So, Ory, you're my expert witness. And the thing that fascinates me about your background is that you are cloud security and application security. And these are two planets evolving around the same ecosystem or sun. What's your take on application security versus cloud security? Are they two totally separate entities? Do they cross pollinate? How do you actually, view application and cloud security working together to actually provide not only a secure infrastructure but a secure application within that infrastructure?
This has been bothering me for the past few weeks actually, and that's because I think I mentioned it earlier before our talk that I gave a talk that was supposed to be controversial, but I had to change the title. I wanted to say there's no such thing as API security; it's all application security. So I think there's a little bit of that in the cloud versus application security. I think at the end of the day, we as software builders, we don't build clouds. Clouds are just the infrastructure for us to deploy our applications. We're building software, we're building applications, and so I think at the end of the day, from our point of view, it's all application security. There is such thing as cloud security because you need to secure the infrastructure on which your application is going to run. It used to be that you had to worry about your Apache exposing directory listing or path traversal or an open FTP, anonymous FTP. That's not the case anymore. Today, you're talking about cloud misconfigurations and open S3 buckets and message queues and cross hybrid cloud, multi-cloud and all these things. So yes, there is a place to talk about how do you secure your cloud infrastructure like you used to secure your on-premise infrastructure. But I think that at the end of the day, the main focus, the main thing that we are after, our goal is to secure applications, not to secure not to pay too much attention. Maybe I'm not making much sense, but I just want to say that
you definitely are. I can see the lens.
Don't forget the application. That's what I'm saying.
Well, and I can see it too. It's like in the industry, everyone talks about the cloud infrastructure and cloud security posture management, and all the budgets are going to cloud initiatives and lift and shift into a cloud environment. And everyone's like, well, we'll just put those same apps right in there. What about the dependencies? What about what changes in terms of the risk?
Exactly.
And you're just basically saying the cloud's configured correctly. We're magical now. And I think a secure cloud environment is very important. There's a lot of great solutions out there. But don't forget about that app. Just because it's moved from an on-premise data center doesn't mean it's going to be better in that cloud infrastructure.
I think it was very easy for people to adopt CSPM and cloud security posture management, and then even vulnerability scanning and CV scanning for CVEs. That's low-hanging fruit. That's very easy, by the way, to push left to give to DevOps and developers to do. But don't forget, we are trying to secure the application. We're not worried about Amazon's security, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's where, if anyone's read anything about, my kind of passionate statement is application security posture management, thinking about the security of the application architecture, not the cloud infrastructure. And how does that app actually go outside the bounds of the intended architecture? Where is PII data going? What are you connecting to in terms of services and critical vulnerabilities on those services that touch internet-facing applications or third parties, so on and so forth. So, I'm all about the holistic thing. And coming from the SaaS world for so many years, I'm like, and you said it many times, it's like SaaS has been around for so many years and everyone's still just using a defined SQL injection and cross-site scripting. Something's a little off right here. We've been doing this for 15 years and we're still facing the same problem. So that's why I think this new approach and the better approach that you kind of alluded to that we need is that combination of cloud and applications working together to produce all sorts of potential unknown risks in terms of infrastructure and application infrastructure. Do you agree with that? Or
Yeah, yeah. I saw the term application security posture management. I looked at Bionic. Obviously, I'm not here to. I'm not affiliated in any way,
Nope, nope.
and
This is
I love the category name. I think there's it makes total sense. It makes total sense. A lot more than container security, for example. I think application security posture management is definitely something we need. Something that approaches this end to end, and not only okay, my database, my PII here, and my containers here, and my API here, and it's not siloed. An application is a sphere containing all of these things end to end, and that's how you should approach it.
Yeah, I always say, like, you go to a URL, is the URL the application, or is the millions of lines of code behind it the application? Because there's probably hundreds of application that you access just simply by a one URL. And, I always say, is Amazon.com an application, or is that hundreds of applications? People don't think of it that way sometimes. You do, I do, but a lot of people don't.
Yeah.
So, all right, we're going to be doing the kind of the final, fun questions. I know we talked about this. This is tattoo code data flows. What's your take on tattoos in the industry? Would you hire people? I know you have some. So you actually are the first guest that has a bunch of tattoos. There we go. So we have
I
that
have a
in
lot of them.
common.
I don't care really. I think as long as you don't have a butterfly tattoo on your face,
It's
which
going to be my next
is
one.
both ridiculous and embarrassing. I don't see how it's related. It's just that every person should do what they want as long as it's not on their forehead and they have to go to a meeting with some Swiss bankers. Uh, Whatever. I love tattoos. I have 3 of them. Um, uh, Sometimes I think by looking at somebody's tattoos, I will, just like looking at what kind of band T-shirts they wear, I will see what they're into, which
Yep.
is I think is fun.
Yeah, it's a self-expression thing, but it's, I see a lot of, topic on the social media on Twitter about tattoos and hiding them at work. And I'm like, in today's day and age, it's about the skill set. People are struggling to find great talent, especially in all kind of lenses of security. I don't think a tattoo is anywhere near a criteria to get the job. And I
On
actually think that,
I want to say it's the complete opposite. I think that in cybersecurity, it's there's a reason why most of the people I really admire or look up to in the cybersecurity industry are a lot crazier than I am. They have tattoos and funny hairdos and piercings, and they love I don't know, consuming a lot of alcohol. I think if I was looking for a security expert, I would definitely start looking at people that look like that more than I would look at people wearing suits.
yeah, if you wear a suit to an interview for a security position, you're probably going to be called a narc.
Or a product manager.
Oh, well, that's great. So we're wrapping up now. This has been a great conversation. I really have you on. This is a passion of Ory in terms of, the world.
Wow. Do I have to choose? First of all, I not related to what we talked about. I'm a big music fan, and I have a band. We have 3 albums.
Awesome.
Yeah, so one passion is music. The other passion is obviously my family and food. But if I have to, be relevant to our discussion,
No,
then
it can be anything. It can be anything.
anything.
So promote your
Um,
band. Let's hear what's your band called. You have albums? Let's hear about them.
it's called Pits, Pits. Sort of art noise rock band. I don't know, influenced by things like Sonic Youth, Blonde Redhead, Slint, to name a few. A lot of instrumental, less singing. Um, what else can I tell you? Let's go. I think we should go back to talking about cybersecurity, though. I don't want to embarrass myself.
Totally fine, totally fine. But just you say
More.
the music thing. I actually went and saw Slash play with his Miles Kennedy project in Charlotte last week, and it was fantastic. They sounded great. So seeing Slash play
Um,
live, so many years after Guns N' Roses came out was just a lot of fun.
so many years after being stuck at home, wearing masks as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, my wife and I, we travel for our wedding anniversary every year for the past few, I don't know, 10 years, other than COVID, to Barcelona for Primavera festival. We love that. It's like going back 20 years, becoming, no kids, good music.
Yep.
Yeah, going back to what we talked about, I would love to see more and more organizations, and that because of my position in the industry, I want to see more organization adopting more cloud native ideas and cloud native architectures and technologies, and of course doing that with security in mind. And please don't adopt first and think about it later, about secure it later. We've learned from our mistakes. So I the more, since I went into serverless and cloud, I discovered this is an amazing world, that allows us to develop a really cool software. And so that's kind of my closing remarks.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being on today.
Thank you for having me. I had a lot of fun.
I want to thank Ory for another great episode on tattoos, code, and data flows. Fantastic conversation. We covered a lot of topics. Please follow, like, subscribe, listen on your native podcast platform. Really great content. So happy to have Ory on today.